Hello and welcome to another episode of CJ's Corner, and I'm CJ. Today we are going to talk about what we always talk about, and that is how to craft a story that captivates, engages, and influences your audience. But today we do it with a little bit of a different twist because we're going to borrow from a book. Louis Prosperi wrote The Imagineering Pyramid. A little closer look at what this pyramid looks like, you notice that in the words Imagineering, it's very Disney-esque. It's because he studied the way Disney created story in theme parks. That's right, in theme parks. So what that means is that what we're going to look at today is part 3 in our series, and it's the final part, that goes over all 15 of the main things you need to address in being able to tell a story through your physical space. So I guess the best place to start is a quick review so that we know exactly where we stand. So let's bring up the first one. It all begins with a story. That's step number 1. Now that basically means you got your core idea. You have to figure out what this thing is going to be about. What story is it telling? What is it that you want to share with your audience? The next step is creative intent. This is where you dig a little deeper from an audience perspective. And you kind of say, what do I want that audience to experience as they walk into the office or into my bedroom or whatever area you're going to accentuate with a theme and so on. Now, sometimes you'll want to use a lot of verbs here so that you know that you're providing something to the audience. So as you're designing, think about those verbs, those action words that instill something more than just a passive look. The third step is attention to detail. This just basically says, let's focus in now and make sure that we have things that we're working with that go all the way down to the subtlest details so the nuances just give such a flavor to the people entering that room. Next is theming. Every room needs to have a theme of some sort, or the entire house or office, whatever it might be, should have a theme. And in coming up with that theme, you want to take a look at things that are related. So for instance, if you want a beach type theme, you don't want to put a Santa Claus in there. It doesn't fit the theme. So you want to think about the details that are related. You want to create, or at least determine a family of elements that you can use that match in with that theme. And when done well, the theme is kind of hard to notice, but it is well felt. In other words, the person is just absorbed into it. They're not saying, oh, gee, look, this beach theme has a blanket over there and it has a buoy over there. And no. It needs to be so well blended that people don't notice. Then the next category is the long, medium, and close shots. Now, basically, long shots are the thing where you bring in the idea from some kind of establishing point of view. You want to introduce the people to it. So as they enter a room, there's kind of an overall look, that long shot, that vistorama, if you will, that gives a sense of what that theme is. Think of the long shot, medium shot, and close-up as arranging and organizing your information. The reason is because when we create a story, we have to figure out, are we going to start out with a close-up, something more intimate, or a medium shot that supports the core idea of the story, or that a long shot, that establishing moment? Or are you going to flip it out and do a different set of combinations where some places you pull back and change things up? Kind of depends on the layout of the place that you're going to be decorating. Okay, next is the Weenies. Now, this is obviously a playful term. Walt Disney came up with it. And it's basically meant to grab the audience's attention, their interest, spark their curiosity. At the same time, it sets the stage. It kind of develops the mood or the atmosphere, if you will. And that just draws the person in a little bit further. Next, we have transitions. Transitions are all about being smooth and seamless. If you're moving from one room into the other, you don't want one room to be this soft, mellow thing and the next one to be fiery, burny. Yeah, you need some kind of transition so people don't go nutty in your place. Okay, next is storyboards. Storyboards is interesting because it's really an outlining of a story, but not just the story itself. It's more importantly, it's about the beats in the story. You want to kind of know what heartfelt moments that you have, what funny moments you have, how you can help change the person's experience, almost like a roller coaster ride of emotions. You want them to feel different things at different times. So that's important to do. Keep in mind there's certain anchor points within your story that you want to have people take notice of things, and those things will be specialized in your place with an item of some sort, or maybe a look. Next, we have pre-show and post-show. So if you're doing this with your house, creating this whole thing on the inside of your house, as people are approaching your house, what have you set up so that it kind of starts to get them into that mood of that theme and that feeling that you're trying to create? And when they're going to leave, did you set things up in a way where they're going to remember your place? They're going to remember the feeling that they had as they visited you, that type of thing. It's all about reinforcing the concepts of that core idea that you have in store for them. Next, we're talking about forced perspective. Here, with forced perspective, this is really about grouping and chunking, if you don't mind data terms used in this context. Sometimes you'll have one area where there's kind of a group of a few things. For instance, at Christmas time, I know a lot of people like to bring out Santa Clauses and ornaments and snowmen and things like that. Well, what if there was a big, long buffet table that kind of had a snowy ground thing on top of the buffet? And over in one area is a cluster of a couple snowmen, but off on the other is a mirror that's made to look like a frozen lake with a couple little skaters on it. You can have that cluster of snowmen where there might be 3 or 4 of them, different outfits, whatever it might be, and that brings a certain level of appeal as people see that whole winter scene overall that fits your Christmas theme. So that's the kind of thing you want to be thinking about. Okay, so that takes us up to where we left off. So now we're going to dive into the next 5 items and the last 5 items to make this happen. So here we go. Here's the first one. Readability. Readability, what does that mean? Okay, we're not talking about having signs in your place that says, the place of family love. Although you could do that. You definitely could do that. But readability is more about when a person enters the room, they have to be able to quickly understand your core idea, your theme, all that just has to automatically be there for them. You don't want them to be in a position where they're sitting there thinking, okay, this is weird. Why is that there? If they're wondering why it's there, clearly it didn't tie in well to your story, to your theme, to the whole experience that you were trying to generate. So you want to make sure you have that set up the right way. Now, to do that, you kind of need the appropriate amount of details and the appropriate details. Not just the amount, but also the details themselves. You have to make sure you have the right content for the expression that you're trying to draw from your audience or your guest, whatever you want to call it. Also, the thing that's really important about readability, because it's got to be able to be picked up on really quick, you want to do it in a way where you simplify anything that appears complex. If there's something complex where the person really has to think hard to figure it out, then you're not in a good place, because they're going to be scratching their head wondering, okay, how does this work exactly? So what you want to do is you want to do it in a way where they're like, I know what that is. You just want that immediate click in their mind that they know exactly how this fits together and what it is. Okay, so that's readability. Let's move on to the next one. Kinetics. Movement. That's right. Just think about movement and motion. I remember when I was making a movie as a little kid. This was back in the day that you actually had to have film, not video, and not digital. It was all before that. The thing that was interesting is that my dad said, son, the difference between photography and movies is motion. So if your image is not moving, maybe the camera should be moving. And it was like, oh, wait a second. Yeah, that makes sense, because it draws the people into what is happening. So same thing. The kinetics is all about the fact that you don't necessarily need movement per se, but have you ever noticed that if there's like a picture of a cartoon, it's like, it looks like they're moving even though it's a still? That's the kind of thing that you want to bring into it. You want to have a sense of movement. Now, you can also create a sense of movement in other ways. For instance, maybe when you enter a certain room, it is so relaxing that the movement is your shoulders dropping, going, ah, and you can now relax. That counts, okay? Anything that generates variety forces movement, because if you're laughing and happy and then you're concerned and then maybe you're sad and then maybe you're thinking, wow, this is brilliant, those are all types of movement that happen. Sometimes they're all facial movements that your audience brings to it because of what you've done in the room. So those are the things that you want to think about. If you were writing a report of some type or a blog post, and you just have paragraph after paragraph after paragraph that all looks the same, breaking it up with headers, putting in bullet points in some places, putting in a fancy quote box, any of that kind of stuff creates movement of the eye and makes it much more enjoyable than just white text on a white piece of paper. Okay? So that gives you the idea of kinetics. Next, we have the it's a small world effect. It's a small world after all. Anyway, you are probably familiar with it. You've probably been to Disney at some point in time, and you remember that, and you can't get away from remembering that. So when it's called it's a small world effect, what we're really talking about is repetition and reinforcement. Now, you don't have to do it ad nauseum. You can just do it enough that it reinforces your message, your core idea, your concepts, so that the person really truly understands what it is that you're trying to accomplish. Okay, so that's enough said. I don't like the repetition that goes too far. So make it subtle when you can. Next, we have hidden Mickeys. Now, hidden Mickeys have been talked about at Disney World for a long time, or Disneyland, where if you go to certain places, there are literally hundreds of hidden Mickeys all around the park. Maybe these two things and this one there make a face and two ears. It's not really a hidden Mickey, trust me. But the idea is there. You want to have what we today, especially in story, call Easter eggs. You want little kind of fun hidden things within your story or within your room that people are visiting that causes them to be like, I caught that. You know, you want them to have that kind of fun experience. Now, if you don't know how to create it that way, do something that maybe raises a question that gets them to think along the lines of your message or your point or whatever that mood and feeling that you want them to experience. Anything to generate interaction. See, when you're building a place or a special space, you want it to kind of be an instigator of conversation. You want it to kick off a conversation in a way where there's a natural opening, people get used to chatting with each other, because as you then sit down and go to have your conversation or event or whatever it is, people are already engaged. So you don't have that cold, awkward feeling of how do I get this thing started? It's already started because of the way you did your design. Okay, last but not least, plussing. Plussing is absolutely the difference between excellence and really good. Plussing is all about, after you've got it all put together, you kind of go back, you look at it, and you say, what else can I give my audience or my guests? What else can I put into this that makes this work in a special manner? Do they have certain expectations that I can exceed? What touch of excellence can I bring to the table? Now, plussing is a really, really important thing. Back when Toy Story 2 was being made by Pixar, that was back in the day where videotapes were the thing. When Toy Story 1 took off and was a big box office success, nobody had ever really done a good sequel in the movies. So Disney thought, why don't we do the sequel on video, because we can make it a lot cheaper, it'll be quick money, let's try it. Well, as they were working on it, their team of people were so used to plussing things that they took this cheap throw-together video, and suddenly it got so good, they thought, let's release it to the theater instead. And it made more money than Toy Story 1. It was a huge success, all because they kept on plussing it. And what that basically means is you take a look at every little piece and everything that you've put together, and you say, how can I improve this one thing? And you just do these little pockets of, quality checks. Or how can I improve this? How can I make this a little more special? How can I make this more unique? How can I, you just kind of look for those little added touches that will give it a little bit more. The audience absolutely loves it. So, those are the 15 key steps of taking your story and turning it into something useful in physical space. Now, I just want to thank again the book, The Imagineering Pyramid. You can feel free to get a hold of that. Louis Prosperi is the author, and frankly, he did a wonderful job capturing how Disney took story elements and created theme parks using those story elements. So these elements that we're talking about here can be used for actually writing a story if you want to write a story. Same elements used for making a movie. Same elements for making an incredible space in your house or your office or wherever it might be. Well, that is all we have for today, as they say. So until next time, have a good one.